Good morning, everybody. Let me go ahead and get the stream shared. Just give me one moment, everybody, and we will get started. Alrighty, everybody, give me 1 second. Good morning, good morning. Um, get everything set up. Sorry, I had to share the stream out. And give me 1 second because I need to turn off my heater or else I'm gonna absolutely melt. Alright, I am back. Good morning, good morning. Okay, so I'm gonna pull up the drawings, and we do have. See if we have any data this morning. I don't think today was a big data day. No, today is just existing homes, which isn't going to move the market and the 3-year auction. So not too much to worry about there. Okay, so for the market today, and let me go ahead and just delete some of these notes. This was from the video last night. Okay, daily time frame. We have not secured the daily upper Bollinger yet. Which means that the upper Bollinger is very likely going to be around that 740 range, towards the open. Sorry, let me. Um, it's going to be around that 740 range towards the open, which puts the upper Bollinger only about $3, $4 away from our upside target, closing the upper Bollinger day one, securing that level at the close. The 5 mall, which is our nearest support, okay, is going to open very, very likely around that 731 range. Might be slightly less, but I highly anticipate it to be around that 731.30. So that means that the downside from here would be a whole roughly $5. Now, I'm not very set on. Hold on, let me hide the moving averages. I'm gonna hide the Bollingers and everything for a moment too. This is kind of the structure we're in between, and I know this looks like a happy face, but um, we either have this double top playing out, which personally I don't think that's the case. Um, but if that is a double top playing out, then we will see this very large first cup close. Okay, we will mark this, but we're just going to keep it fairly hidden on the day until it actually starts forming. Now, with that said, I do see the multiple cups that have been forming throughout the last few sessions where it's just cup and handle, form, or, cup, form, bear structure at the top, create the handle, rinse, repeat. And we're still seeing a lot of that. So that's why I do believe we will close this smaller cup right here, which I'll show this on the 5 minute time frame. That's kind of what we're identifying for our first trade. But I'm also expecting that to occur. Now, it kind of puts the day in between, basically, are we going to have a major sell-off or a major buy? Um, it's really not going to be an in-between type of day, I don't think. So that's kind of what we're contending with here. Now, on the 5 minute time frame, and I think I'm going to make these less visible so that they're not as annoying. But on the one or on the 5 minute time frame, we do have this potential inverse head and shoulders. It could complete this cup forming a cup top, expecting can't talk, bearish structure at the top there. From that bearish structure, create a handle and give us the breakout towards the upside, while also forming that right shoulder on the inverse cup and handle. So, or the inverse head and shoulders. I cannot talk today. I apologize. So that's kind of what we're looking for on the bullish side. The bearish side, we do have this potential inverse cup forming. So if we do reject downward today, then our first target will be that 735.19. From there, we will expect bullish structure from the bottom. And the reason why we expect bullish structure is for further liquidity to continue pulling downward. Okay, so that's kind of what we're contending with here. Now, I do just want to look at a few things, and I might be somewhat quiet for a second. The HIG, we need to check on open because we did have this very large candle to the 80.50. Um, if we see continued buying into the open, which the share or the time and sales are showing pretty large share buys already just in the pre-market, over 110,000 shares bought within the last few minutes. Um, so we'll be looking for that. We do want to see HIG pulling upward. I'm not too worried about the pre-market price too much, as sometimes people mess with the pre-market on that one. Now we will be looking at the VVIX on open. Sorry for the colors here, but it's important. The VVIX over the last few trading days has been pulling up pretty aggressively. Um, we were at this range where we were at the 92, well, that 91, 95, and we really were expecting it to reject downward into this green below the 92 range, to really signify that there was going to be massive buying. Now, today, I'm not sure if we're going to gap up or gap down on the VVIX. We'll have to see once, the market opens. But we do see that um, UVIX and UVIXY really aren't buying up too much in the pre-market, so I'm not super worried about that. Now, for semiconductors here, on the 5 minute time frame, this looks super good because one, we have all of the liquidity we need for an inverse head and shoulders. That inverse head and shoulders would take us all the way back up to that 529. Okay. So is it very likely that what we will see today? Sorry, I cannot talk very well right now. Yes. This is extremely likely. However, we do need to identify that with this very large wick downward, this does create the potential that this can be a not just um inverse cup here, but potentially forming head and shoulder liquidity right here to further pull us down on the day. So we'll be watching that very closely towards the open, especially. Now, if the market pulls this upwards towards the upper Bollinger here on the 5-minute time frame, that will invalidate the smaller head and shoulders, which will kind of give more credence to us seeing that cup and handle versus the inverse cup. So I'm going to kind of keep that hidden for right now, but that is something we're contending with. Market opens in 3 minutes. Okay. Um, one thing I wanted to show very quickly, just for the last little bit to kind of solidify where I think we're going for today. Last week, we didn't see the upper Bollinger on the daily time frame taken. However, this is the weekly time frame. We did secure the upper Bollinger on the weekly time frame, which means that we should be expecting a higher high this week, which, that heavily coincides with an upper Bollinger move on the daily time frame. So a lot to contend with, but we will be going over it. So good morning. Yes, I do get excited when you join the chat. No, I'm super tired today. I do apologize. I did not get a lot of sleep, but I am here. I am ready to trade. So waiting for the market open, and we'll just go over everything once we get those values. And remember, USO is a little elevated today. Now, I do specifically want to take 90 puts on USO for September. I believe it's September 18th. I will post those in the chat once I decide to take them, but I will be taking a couple of those positions today. And I was also looking at BNO, I believe the symbol is. Yes, BNO. Kind of same thing here. Long positions could do really well. Uh, as long as we're above this, roughly $35 strike, probably about September, um, should pay off pretty well. Now, one thing I am looking at here is Bitcoin. Bitcoin looks like it's doing fairly well today. Um, Usually I will like to see Bitcoin running either, if it's buying, then usually we'll be seeing buying within the overall equities. Not always the case, but that's generally how it will work. So if we do see Bitcoin continuing to close this cup towards that 82,400 range, then we will be, you know, looking for further buying within the rest of the SPY and everything. So QQQ here, market just opened. We will see whether we're going to start selling off or not. And I want to check the SPY and semiconductors. Semiconductors does look like it is trying to fill that cup. Okay, so this smaller cup did get closed. With that smaller cup closing, that does create the position for a short position once we are fully pushing within the upper Bollinger here. Um, I'm not going to take that short position. I personally just don't want it. However, it's still a very good short position to take, especially if we're going to be heading down towards that 735. Okay, so definitely keep that on your radar. The entry again will be above the upper Bollinger, which we're basically above right now. So, um, if you want to take that short position, that is available. However, on semiconductors, we are seeing that very, very likely we're going to close this cup all the way to the 529. So that's kind of exactly what we're looking for. From the top of this cup, I will be opening a SPY put. Okay, and I know that may not make a whole lot of sense right now, but we expect bearish structure at the top of these cups. Okay, this will coincide very, very greatly right here with this cup. Okay, this is the top of the cup we want to short. So that level will be at the 730, 749. We're basically at that range right now. So a short position for the 20 mile here is very reasonable. Okay, we did fully close the cup. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and look at SPY puts here. So I'm going to take a couple of the 736, and from the 736, we are just writing this down towards the 736.60. Okay. Um, that will be the exit on those puts. It's not a very large position, but that is where we will be taking profit on those. Um, Now, ideally, we are going to be trying to look for a lower Bollinger move to pick up calls today. However, I'm not sure we will see that. So just be, you know, very, very aware of that. Sorry, just one moment, everybody. I just want to kind of look at everything that I got going on here. Okay, cool. Cool. Everything's looking great. Do you want to go ahead and take that short position? Okay, I'm in the 0 DTE 736 puts right now. And again, we're only writing this to the 20 mile on the 5-minute time frame. We will be taking a look at the VVIX here in a couple seconds, but this is not going to be a very long put position here. So I will circle back around to this. Just remember that the 20 mile is at that 736.61. So roughly $1.10 downward from here. I want to look at the VVIX. It did gap upward quite a bit today, so we will be looking for this to be pulling downward. Um, Currently, this is showing that we are in that selling range. However, our symbols are showing quite a bit of bullishness here, um, which is actually getting ready to start invalidating a lot of the previous bear structure we had on the day. So, semiconductors, very, very quality short here. Um, I didn't take the semiconductor short. I took the SPY short, but still should pay out regardless. QQQ closing this cup. So again, more bullishness and another reason why we should be expecting a handle from the top of this cup. Okay. For QQQ, that's roughly a whole $3 of downside. Now I do want to look at the HIG. Bitcoin seeing just a little bit of selling, but that can be coinciding with our handle here. The HIG is starting to buy back upward. Okay, so that's a good thing. That's what we do want to see. QQQ starting to pull downward on the handle. Again, the exit on QQQ will be at that 710.43. For semiconductors, they'll be at the 523.40. So quite a bit of range on that semiconductor short. I want to look at some of the values really quick. So the 5 mod today is much higher than I expected. So it's almost at the 733. So that means if we want to pull down and do a 5 mod test, we only need to see about $4, $4.50 of downside, which isn't unreasonable. I'm gonna turn my heater back on in a second because I am absolutely freezing. Starting to get our downside here, so I want to go ahead and watch that. Now the upper Bollinger is at 740, almost on the dot. So if we continue our bullish structure here, if we fill out, which we did fill this cup out, so I'm going to finish highlighting that now. Going to delete this inverse head and shoulders because we already have the cup identified, and we already know that the market's trying to play into that slightly. So now one thing with this cup is that dealers might be trying to aim for a much larger cup here. I don't really think that's the case just yet, but if it is, then there will be another opportunity to enter a few more puts at that 780 or excuse me, the 738 range. Um, I don't see that occurring just yet though. Very likely we get our short downward to the 20 month and we will then evaluate positions from there. Now again, for USO, I am taking some of the I have it watch listed. It's the 90 puts for September 18th. Now there's a little bit of a spread on it, which means don't put a market buy. You need to be putting a limit buy. Um, I would set that limit buy around the 205, but I do want to grab a few of those positions fairly soon here. Now I do want to circle back to the VVIX. Did pull up all the way to the 99.74. It is pulling down slightly, but if we want to see our upside buying throughout equities, we need to see this pull down very aggressively today. So that's something that's going to happen if we're going to be seeing the upside today. If not, then we will be chopping um, the majority of the day if we just sit in this red zone or even potentially starting to sell off. Grip is at a really nice um, entry again. This is 5 minute time frame, but again, I have a ton of drip shares going. This is shorting oil. I can't give financial advice, obviously, but 100 shares should be what you should be trying to target so that you can sell CCs on the shares later on. Bitcoin seeing a little bit of selling here, but technically with this being pushed into the 5 minute lower Bollinger, this does create the conditions for buying back up to the upside. Okay, because that's always when we take calls. Same thing will work with Bitcoin, even though we're not trading it. Nvidia looking very bullish, closed this large cup to the 718 or the 218. From that, anticipate a handle to the downside. That's roughly a whole $3.80. Okay, so quite a bit of downside within our semis right now. That looks almost purely for liquidity. QQQ still about $1.50 away from its level. And SPY being a jerk, not giving us a lot of range on these puts, unfortunately. But um, again, we're going to be exiting at the 20 mile. 20 miles currently at the 736.72. Yes, you should be closing that put on the 5 minute time frame. Okay. Um, when we're day trading, We are specifically using the 5-minute time frame to enter and exit these trades. Okay. Um, so unless I'm specifically looking at a different time frame or something, then kind of always assume during these day trading streams that we will be on the 5-minute time frame. QQQ still pulling down, getting very close to the handle, while we're seeing kind of the inverse out of SPY. Um, SPY is just continuing to push upward, which kind of alludes to this larger cup, okay, which means that I'm simply just going to tack on a couple of my positions to the puts here. So again, I'm still targeting those 736 puts. So hold on, I need to go back to SPY on my phone because I want to add a few of those. Okay, so my current average is 0.67. Not the most pristine, but we did get the larger cup closing, um, which is actually a very good thing for us for the bullish case on the day, and it gives us a lot more room on this short position. So it works out. This short, again, same positions here. We're taking it to the 20 MA on the 5-minute time frame. So the 736.72, that gives us roughly a whole, you know, $1.30 downside. Silver's doing good. That means that the market is bullish because when oil is elevated, precious metals will be running against it. So with the markets being bullish on our precious metals right now, that's telling us that the overall equities should be turning bullish as well. Now, pig is a little concerning. I do want to be seeing pig buying upward today. Um, and also same with liquid. Liquid here did close a cup, so this could just be forming some wonky liquidity handle. Kind of the same thing with pig here as well. So this could be building a handle, but again, I do want to see major buying kicking in here. Let's check the VVIX again. VVIX still tapering, but we need to see this pull down multiple dollars today. But if we get our upside buying, then that will most certainly happen. This price action works really great because I still have tons of calls from last week. No, I'm not closing any of them yet. We are looking for the upper Bollinger push to occur. We're only $1.70 away from that. So the likelihood is that with a lot of this earlier bearish structure being invalidated, um, we should be really looking for this handle to be forming to the upside. Okay. Um, which again, this will come from this cup being formed here. This cup ended up playing out very well. So we're just waiting for the bearish structure at the top. Hasn't really formed too much. This is the 1 minute time frame. Sometimes I'll go to the 1 minute time frame just to look for additional structure. Essentially, we do have a head and shoulders forming here, which that's good. We expect bearish structure at the top of a cup, and that would give us, our short position. I'm not going to be adding on too many more puts here. I'm only going to add on just another time here. So again, I am targeting the 736, just tacking on a couple more. Okay, and my average is currently at the 0.54. Okay. So same deal here. We are still targeting this 20 mile on the 5-minute time frame. All of our other calls currently that expire this Friday, we're holding because if we get our upper Bollinger push today, this means that with the upper Bollinger mechanics, we see the day one close above that 740. Day two, we anticipate a higher high. So we have a lot of room to continue to the upside here. So currently, we're just waiting for bearish structure to fill out and give us our full short position to the downside. Now, with these newly added puts, and again, I'm still holding the puts that I added from earlier because when you're in the upper Bollinger, that's when you take your put positions. We will still be exiting these all at the 20 mile. But now we have roughly $2 of range on our puts rather than just that measly dollar that we had previously. We are looking for the VVIX to be pulling downward. However, it might pull upward very, very slightly if we get our downside handle within SPY, QQQ, everything else. So I do want to look at QQQ and semiconductors because again, even with QQQ here, no, I did not take QQQ puts, but same is still applying. We're still looking for this exit within the 20 mile, and we're looking for that throughout tech, SPY, and semiconductors currently. Pull up semis. Semiconductors really starting to taper at the top of this cup here. Okay, which that's good. This is telling us that we should be getting our handle to the downside. Now, if the market decides to just fully blast off and give us the upper Bollinger, then I'm okay with these puts kind of burning. Um, but that's not ideal. Okay, and we do want to watch for that. So with some of the tapering on semiconductors, we're still looking for bearish structure. We're still looking for, again, at the top of a cup. We always look for bearish structure. Um, so that's what we're looking for, especially with the VVIX elevated. There's really no reason why we shouldn't get the liquidity that we're looking for here. And again, these puts are just for downside liquidity within this handle on the cup. So we will be looking for this right shoulder to form. From that right shoulder forming, should take us down to the 20 mile, which is currently again at the 736.87. Sorry, I haven't had a lot of time to look at chat. No, we're not selling covered calls on drip yet. No, no, no. Drip's going to be very volatile for, the next however long that this oil volatility is going to be lasting, okay? Um, and what that really means is that it's not the time to be selling CCs on drip, because the likelihood is that your CC is just going to end up. Hold on, sorry, I'm looking at a couple things. That CC would just end up basically turning to toast. Meaning likely your shares would get called, and you wouldn't profit a lot selling CCs at this level. We want to wait until the IV really starts kicking up before we start selling CCs, um, because that's where the big money is at. PVIX here pulling, well, it did pull downward for a second, um, but it went back upward. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Sorry, my wife was giving me coffee. Um, okay, so wait, is that our cat? Let's look at our cat now that I'm getting a notification on it. Oh, that's a plus notification. I thought it was negative. No, I'm not looking to buy into a rally. Okay, so we're still simply just waiting for our exit on these puts. But overall, the day's insanely bullish. Um, we've only or we've hit the 739.14, which was, just a dollar away from that upper Bollinger. We're seeing a lot of the liquidity really trying to form to the upside, which is really just giving us our signal that yes, the market wants upward. So once we get an exit on these puts, our day will be even better. We'll be trying to enter calls around that 20 mile range. Good morning, everybody. Sorry I have not been able to look at chat a lot this morning. We've been super, super, super busy just going over everything. Um, there's been a ton to go over. And in fact, I actually want to look at the news on unusual whales, which we do have in our Discord. Currently it's $1 a month, but it will be going free in roughly 1 to 2 months. Iran oil minister says the oil output unchanged during 40-day conflict, which that's really what I've been telling everybody is that yes, there's been some disruptions with some of the facilities, but a lot of these countries can still just be absolutely pumping the heck out of oil, in terms of like literally pumping it out of the ground. Um, they can get oil flowing insanely quickly. Um, this oil volatility that we're dealing with, at least in my personal opinion, based on everything I've been seeing so far, is just really a short-term uh, disruption within the supply chain. And that's something that will get corrected pretty quickly once the time comes. Um, which is why I am shorting oil. This is why I do have drip positions, and why I will be very shortly here entering into some of those USO 90 puts for September. So I do want to be having a pretty large short position within oil because oil is one of the fastest falling commodities when the time comes. Now, again, we are simply just still looking for this head and shoulders. I do want to look at the 1 minute time frame. Okay, so it is starting to curve down here on the 1 minute time frame. That's good. That's really kind of giving us this exit, being able to pull down to the neckline, form that right shoulder, and give us our exit at the 5 minute 20 mile. 5 minute 20 mile is currently essentially right at that 737 range. So a whole $1.50 downward. And we are just going to be super, super patient for that. Um, Once we get to the 20 mile here, we will reevaluate things. Now, again, we're not selling any of our current calls in terms of the ones due or the ones expiring this Friday. Okay. We're going to be continuing to hold all of those calls. When we get our upper Bollinger moved, um, again, that's telling us that we're going to be basically seeing the 740. Well, even be higher than that today potentially. Um, but at least that 740 close is very, very likely coming. Now, I do want to look at the BVIX here. And I want to look at QQQ because I see TQQQ in the red, which means that QQQ did hit the 20 mile. So there's that handle to the downside. This will correlate to SPY seeing its handle. Okay, semiconductors seeing its handle as well. So SPY here, should be getting our 20-mile move. VVIX is pulling down slightly, but with, you know, QQQ and semiconductors pulling downward like we're expecting, um, you know, this should give us the liquidity we need for the downside here. Sorry if you heard that. That was my jaw. Pig selling a little bit. I'm not too worried just yet. I do think this is kind of just liquidity that's forming. Nvidia starting to pull downward, which is good because again, Nvidia formed this very large cup, so Nvidia still has roughly about $3 of downside. And our VVIX here is still pulling down slightly, which means that dealers are not hedging as much as as much as they were. And at this point, we're just kind of waiting. Microsoft has been buying up large majority of the day. The ADL is looking really nice on that. Liquid is starting to buy up as well. Semiconductors, not exactly buying up, but it did push down all the way to the 523. So we are looking for our push down within the SPY already. Seeing semiconductors pulling down even further, which should definitely give us our downside on SPY. Also see a large share sale out of SPY too. Not very large, I mean, it's just 1,000 shares, but I only track anything above 999 shares, so I only see large scale orders. Okay, I'm gonna be right back in just a couple seconds because I need to turn my heater on. I am going to turn into an icicle if not. Just 1 minute, everybody. No, it's not too late. But wait for the bottom of this handle to hit before you target calls to the upside, okay? Because there is a lot of room today. Um, we just have to be very patient for it and allow it to really kick in. Um, Usually you won't see the market try to do some crazy upper Bollinger push um, early in the day. Usually that comes later in the day. So overall, I'm still trying to find liquidity in here or the downside anyway, so that we can take some positions both in the 0DT and to add on to some of the weekly positions. Sorry, I'm talking like a robot today. Okay, let me turn on my heater. Let me drink some coffee really quick. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. Okay. We're still just waiting for this to form. And I do want to look at a few different things here. So Nvidia still giving us our downside. So very likely once Nvidia pushes down to the 215, that's when we will see the downside within SPY. But that is what we're looking for currently. USO still pulling down. BVIX still pulling downward pretty well. Um, was all the way up to 99.74. It is down to 98.98. So that's very good, but not exactly what we're looking for our short positions here. Um, this is one of those wonky days where QQQ and semiconductors gave us the perfect short, but for some reason SPY hasn't yet, which is just really weirding me out. Usually SPY is the big mover because SPY is really the big heavyweight of all three of them. So when we get the move out of QQQ and semiconductors, but SPY kind of just chops here, very, very strange. They need to do some rebalancing with their ETFs. Absolutely. Now, this morning I did add into GDXY shares. This is a weekly yield for gold. I like it a lot. Um, I added some shares in the pre-market today, but I've been just slowly adding to that position. I also added to TLTLW, which doesn't look that great, but this is based on the long end bond. It is a monthly dividend. It's not super great right now, but I'm seeing a ton of weight coming to treasuries very soon, so I did add my TLTW position back last week, and I added some more shares this morning. SPY, we're still just waiting for our exit, and unfortunately, as the SPY is chopping here, our exit is climbing up against us. So even though we originally were targeting a little further downward towards that 737, or excuse me, the 736 like 60 range, um, that's kind of pulling up against us now. That's now at 737.27. So if we keep chopping in here, then that 20 MA is just going to continue pulling upward, which is not ideal. Okay, not ideal for short positions one bit. VVIX here, we actually do want to see a very, very tiny spike just to really solidify that we're going to get our downside handle and SPY. QQQ building liquidity for the upside again. So we do have to be careful with this on SPY because essentially if QQQ and semiconductors start taking off again, because they've already pulled down for their handles technically. Technically, they have all the liquidity they need to continue flying for the rest of the day. So it's a little concerning for SPY, seeing how we did not get our downside move. If semiconductors and tech start breaking out again, then this downside's going to be absolutely cooked, and there's not a lot we can do about that. Um, And unfortunately, that makes it very hard to take all positions to the upside too, because it's very rare to see a massive, massive push above the upper Bollinger. Um, we did have this happen last Thursday, where we did see it push down against the lower Bollinger very aggressively. So kind of in the same way, just towards the upside, where we pulled down, pulled up slightly, but we didn't even get to the 20 mile, so we didn't even have an exit there on the calls. Pulled down all the way again, and at that second major pull down, that's when we did start seeing some call exits, but we did have to suffer quite a bit through that original entry to do so. Not really wanting to do that with these puts here, um, as today again is very, very bullish. Our upside's very large, and if we get it, they should be able to solidify it into the close, which means that they're going to lock that 740 level in. So if we don't get our downside move in SPY, what time is it? It's 10:09. If we don't get it in the next 15 minutes, I want us out of those puts. Um, we'll recoup whatever premium and then just look for continued upside. Now I know it's a little different for me because I have a boatload of calls from last week, so these puts could burn to zero and I really wouldn't mind, but I know that some of you don't have calls from last week and I don't want you burning your money um on puts, especially when we're getting kind of discombobulated and disjointed price action. Um we got the handle downward within semiconductors, we got the handle downward within QQQ, but it entirely skipped over the SPY, which it's not great. It's not what we're looking for. And potentially SPY could be forming a small handle right there, um, which would mean that we would be just continuing to push into the upper Bollinger again. And from that upper Bollinger push, that would basically push us above support, well above the cup. Um, if we do form this smaller cup here, then there will be a call entry because from this smaller cup, regardless, we should be seeing a smaller handle. That smaller handle would give us that breakout well above that 740 range. Okay, so we will find an opportunity to enter calls if we get completely basically screwed out of our put exit and our call entry. Um, so I'll be ensuring to work on that for everybody. Well, yeah, I know the Nasdaq's the big boy. I get that. But we trade the SPY, so that's what I'm looking at. Now let's take a look at our volatility again. It is pulling upward very slightly, which this actually means a lot, because again, each penny this moves upward within the VVIX, this is telling us that uh, someone with very large money went out and purchased insurance against their equities. Okay. Um, you generally wouldn't do that if you're a dealer and you're seeing upside orders to the 740. Okay. Um, unless you're, just not a good dealer. But usually good dealers don't last long, so they're not usually the ones with the big money. So PVIX, we do have to pay attention to. It is super, super, super elevated right now. Again, it is within this selling range, meaning that almost every time we've seen the market pull above this 98, 99 range, we've started to see very, very, very heavy selling. We also see UVIX and UVIXY green on the day, which is really stupid when we're at all-time highs. Um, so a little bit of divergences occurring throughout the market. Now for UVIX, UVIXY, and the actual VIX itself, I don't really care about those too much within the intraday. Um, for example, the VIX being up 6% right now isn't telling me a whole lot other than um, some bears got burned pretty badly, but that doesn't mean that's big money either. That could be purely retail money. Um, Unlike the VVIX where it's usually only very large money. So we have about another 7 minutes before we're going to fully cut those puts. Okay. Um, Now with this potentially pushing up here, and I do kind of want to show this on the 1 minute time frame here. When we push up, because it's looking super likely that this occurs, we will use this small handle downward to exit our puts, enter calls, and fully take the upside. Okay. So with this push here, just allow this to occur. It will work against your put premium currently, but allowing for that handle downward will give you a little bit of that put premium back. Because for QQQ semiconductors, they're both telling us that they are ready to head upward. Um, with that though, it is concerning with the VVIX still being elevated and not basically being defeated at this point, and with the HIG pulling downward slightly. Okay, those are major signals that we really can't ignore. Um, and they are telling us that the market does want to see a little bit of selling here. So from this cup top, and I'm not saying take additional puts here. This is purely us trying to exit these puts. Okay. Um, we're going to be doing this very likely the 1 minute time frame, which again isn't ideal, but we do need to get out of these puts. Okay. Um, the exit will be around that 738.71. Okay. Um, if we're lucky, this will turn into a much deeper downside and potentially that could create liquidity for a larger head and shoulders, double top, something like that. But that's not what we're looking for here. We're simply wanting to get out of these puts at this point and get some additional calls set up. So I am going to circle this as a failed entry, which is very rare. Okay. Usually you don't see that push up against the upper Bollinger like that without testing the support and then continue pushing up further. So unfortunate for those puts, but the calls are absolutely just skyrocketing right now. So yeah, we're seeing semiconductors getting ready to close this smaller cup here. Very likely we'll be seeing the same out of QQQ. I can find it because I am blind. Yep, same with QQQ here. So yeah, we want out of these puts. Um, Cup has closed. Let's just get a small handle down on this cup. Let's get out of these puts. Now for the calls, and let's just kind of look at the market here. Hold on. I am going to look on my phone because I am trying to watch this on the computer as well. So TQQQ is essentially at the 76, 77. Let's see what Success is at. Success is at 844. So when we do enter calls to the upside, a really nice and cheap option is the $8 puts on Success. Just get these watch listed, um, because again, we will be trying to enter some of those once we do get our slight move downward. And for TQQQ, the 77 calls are pretty reasonable, and that's probably what I'd really want to take. Um, Even though that's very close to in the money. But I think you're gonna get quite a lot of premium out of that. Now, if you can't afford that, then you can take the 78 or even the 79 strike, as both of those should hit very well. And today has not given us a call entry, so I just kind of want to really identify that. We only enter calls on the lower Bollinger, okay? And this is something that we can see throughout pretty much any time frame. Um, Lower Bollinger entry gives you awesome upside. Lower Bollinger entry, not the perfect upside. I believe this was, oh, that was the end of Friday. Lower Bollinger, I might have said upper Bollinger, but I apologize. Lower Bollinger gives you that upside. Lower Bollinger, the upside. Lower Bollinger, the upside. Lower Bollinger, upside. And lower Bollinger upside. So hopefully you can understand why we target the lower Bollinger for upside calls here. Today's a little bit of an enigma with how heavily it's pushing. Especially when we are seeing semiconductors and tech pushing, or they had their downsides. And we didn't see that out of SPY at all. I think that's quite strange. VVIX here is still pulling upward, so this is still very, very concerning. This is one of the first times I've seen the VVIX pushing upward against an all-time high market. Um, Very strange signal. Pig, we're not really seeing major buying yet either. Same with liquid. We did have a little bit of buying, but not major buying. So it's concerning. We're only 50 cents away from the upper Bollinger, but we're seeing some bearish signals within our larger, dealer indicators. What am I waiting for to get out of the puts? We're waiting for some of these handles to the downside. Whenever we have cups closing, usually they create handles. Hold on, I'm trying to show this. So we had this cup close all the way to the 738 today. Now, with the top of this cup closing, we expect bearish structure at the top. Now, so far we really haven't gotten that. We've gotten, additional bullish structure. Okay, that's not something that's standard. Um, Again, I always short the top of a cup, and I've done that literally throughout thousands and thousands and thousands of trades, and it's something I'll always do. Um, just like this cup here. Yes, it's on the 1 minute time frame, but I do expect bearish structure at the top of that cup or a handle to the downside. Now the handle is important because this is liquidity to continue pushing upward. So that's what we're looking for the downside here. This is what we're looking for our put exit. Looking for some form of handle to start forming here. And again, we can kind of go over this on the put side as well. So let's do the template. Yeah. Okay. So looking at the upper Bollinger, whenever the upper Bollinger gets pushed, what do we see? Massive downside, not massive downside there because that was end of the day. Massive downside, 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 downside. Even this upper Bollinger push right there. A little bit of downside, not much though. Downside. So we don't enter calls within the upper Bollinger, okay? Because that's really telling us that that's kind of the edge of the road temporarily. That's always when we enter puts. Um, just unfortunately, this original put entry did not give us our downside pretty much virtually at all. Um, again, very rare for that to occur out of literally thousands of trades. This is extremely, extremely rare. It does not happen very often. So I'm not too concerned about it right this moment. And potentially, we could be forming an even larger bearish structure here, especially when we're seeing our VVIX pulling upward. We're seeing the HIG still sitting pretty low. So we have multiple cups that need handles here, okay? And traditionally, cups generally, try to fill those handles outward. So that is what we're looking for both the exit and to be able to properly enter calls. Okay. So this isn't just us trying to rush out of puts here. This is us trying to have a very well timed position in both selling the puts while taking calls. Okay. Um, with all the signals going on here, I want to say just go ahead and hold these puts. Especially when we're seeing this potential larger head and shoulders forming here at the top. And this is the top of this larger cup. Okay. This larger cup did invalidate the previous bear structure that we had building. So we do have a large room for a downside on this handle here. Okay. Um, you know, technically we're not going to invalidate this cup until we push down all the way to the 734, or excuse me, the 735. But, we still should be targeting this 20 mile here. 20 mile is at the 737.83. I really do believe that's when we're going to be getting our exit and our call entry. So we're going to be very patient, as hard as it is to be patient. Um, I did say that I wanted people selling out of those within a certain time frame, but going over everything, I really think I want people, within your risk tolerance, obviously, to be holding those puts because I do see a further downside today. Um, and if these puts are going to pay out, I'd rather us be able to get at least paid on these puts than just get burnt. Okay. And we also want a good call opportunity too. This has not been a call opportunity today. Uh, again, the call opportunities are entered within the lower Bollinger. We did not get that at all. So Hopefully that makes sense. Yes, I can check meta. My wife has to go, so just give me 1 second, everybody. Okay, let me go ahead and check meta. So for meta here, oh, look at the 30-minute time frame. Ooh, that is some gnarly structure. Let's go to the 4 hour. Yeah, you have some pretty gross structure here. Okay, so 4 hour time frame, you have this super obvious head and shoulders, and this is telling you almost verbatim that they want that 515. Now, what you do have to be careful with here, and we are going to change the template, that we do have a cup formed. Okay, from that cup formed, this could be larger bearish structure to give us the handle to pull to the upside. Okay, so be careful shorting that. Now, 5 minute time frame, really don't like the structure here on the day. This is showing an inverse cup to the downside here. So if you could get an upper Bollinger push within the 5 minute time frame, that would create a really nice short opportunity to the downside. Seeing a little bit of selling now, finally. Again, we're going to be very, 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 very patient. We're going to wait for this 737, 91. We're only about 40 cents away, so really just allow that to kick in. Our BVIX is at 99.01. So once we hit our exit here, we're going to be patient before we enter any calls, anything else. Um, you can tack on some of those dated calls that I talked about, and I'll post those in chat here. It will be the success 8. Then DQQ. I believe we said we'll have the 77 calls. Oh, you didn't wait? Okay. We have a lot of upside. I mean, you can kind of blindly. Okay, exit those puts, everybody. Exit, exit, exit. And start getting into these calls. These are for Friday, okay? Um, Geez, they did not give us a lot of time on that. Did not put these on a watch list, dang it. Hold on, I'm trying to get these calls or these uh Success puts and everything bought. Okay, Success puts at 0.28. Okay, let's see, they should get filled. No, we're just gonna go to the 2.9 and get it filled. Okay, and then the TQQQ. So the Success, hold on, I'm gonna post that in chat. Success filled at 0.29. TQQ, come on. Where are you? There you are. Okay, and again, we want the 77 calls. I'm gonna put an order in at the 170. Let's try the 177. Okay, it got filled at the 176. So TQQQ 6. Okay. Now you can get spy calls for Friday. Um, but I really kind of I kind of dislike doing that because the spy call premium is going to be absolutely just disgusting. Let's take a look at it. Let's say the 742 calls. Let's see what those are priced at. I mean, those are 290. Um, those could potentially turn into, 800, $900 contracts. So that's potentially pretty darn good. But it's a larger position. So if there's anything that goes wrong, um, that gets burnt very, very quickly, especially with us having to buy out of the money. Um, kind of dislike that one, kind of don't want to suggest that. I really like these socks as puts because these are basically taking semiconductor calls to the upside. Okay, I really like the TQQQ calls because those are literally taking tech calls to the upside. So I like those a lot. And the funny thing is with TQQQ, we actually did enter very close to this lower Bollinger. And with SOX S, we didn't enter right at the lower Bollinger, um, or the upper Bollinger, but we got very close. Remember, we have puts in this, so entering at the upper Bollinger is like entering a call at the lower Bollinger. So I think we timed those very well. Okay, those should turn out to be very, very nice positions, but let's go ahead and look at the rest of the market. So I want to see liquid, which did pull down to the 108.96. However, there was literally a 224,000 share buy 45 seconds ago. So um that's something. That's a massive order for liquid. Jeez. On HIG, we do still have a little bit downside, but it did pull down all the way to the 80.05. Now it's back at the 80.09. So a little bit of buying to the upside from our levels so far. And we're seeing VVIX starting to pull downwards. So we do want to see this basically pulling down a ton today. Okay. Now that we're in our calls, and one thing that I do want to suggest is that even though we are expecting a 2-day push to the upper Bollinger, um, try to hedge some positions. Okay. So, for example, with these success calls or with these success puts that we got, you can also take a few success calls to the upside just to hedge against them. So, for example, success right now is at 8.57. You can take a few of the $9 calls against those $8 puts that we have, or even the $10 calls just to hedge the position. So that way, if we do get some, massive run up or massive sell off against uh, our positions here to the upside, that you'll be having a little bit of insurance against that. Okay. So that's really what hedging is just basically a form of insurance. I heavily suggest it. There's been many times where these out of the money, cheap garbage hedges have ended up turning into our primary positions. Um, so really don't knock what I'm saying here. It's always worth just spending that little bit of money to to secure yourself. So we're seeing all of our stuff starting to buy up, exactly what we want to see. Those success puts that we entered are up a whole 16%. The TQQQ is up 14%. So looking good so far, everybody. We actually did exit those puts on SPY at pretty much the most opportune time, assuming we don't have continued downside. Okay. Um, this was the perfect exit for us. So I'm very proud of that. Um, I am going to put this as a successful trade, even though we did enter slightly early. This did turn into a very successful trade. Those puts for me ended up being like $20, $30 profit per, um, even though they were red for majority of the morning. So always being patient will lead to, more profits. Always just use your levels. Try to really ignore the emotional aspect of trading, and it will help greatly. Now with the HIG, still at that 809 range, but I'm seeing nothing but share buys within literally the last minute. Um, Within the last minute, there's been over, it's hard to count them because there's so many different share buys. Probably around 100,000 different shares have been purchased from multiple different funds all at the same time. Um, Might be the same fund, but they're buying individual blocks. Now, liquid, we do want to be seeing the same thing here, so hold up. Liquid, liquid, liquid. Liquid, we do see somewhat of a large share sell, but we also see some buys coming in too. So we do have a 60,000 share sell, but remember we did that have that 200 and what was it, 230, 220 something thousand share buy, and the actual ETF price is going up slightly, which is, you know, what we're looking for. Now we're not out of the woods yet with this bear structure, so we need to be very careful because this can still turn into a head and shoulders. Okay. The VVIX is still very, very, very elevated today. And with it getting ready to push to this 20 mod, it can either start pulling down towards the lower Bollinger or have a bounce back upward. Okay. So we're going to be watching that very, very closely. But with how the market is structured right now, um, it does look like we will see the downside rejection. Okay. Um, Rather than seeing that upside support. Now, within SPY here, if we can get buying all the way back up to this, what, 739.58, that will fully invalidate this head and shoulders, and that'll tell us that we don't have too much to worry about for the rest of the day. Pig still buying upward, now at 80.11, so exactly what we're looking for. Semiconductors getting ready to invalidate some of this bearish structure as well. So we will be looking for that cup to close to the 529.35. So a lot of weight to be gained on semiconductors here for the day. Potentially this is a double bottom as well, if my drawing tool will work. Potentially that's a double bottom as well. So we do technically have bullish structure going into this. QQQ. QQQ I definitely want to see quite a bit of buying out of, especially because it did pull down to the 708. You know, technically that invalidates this cup a little bit here. Um, and that actually creates a little bit of this inverse cup. So we want to see this invalidated. So we need to be seeing a large amount of buying to the upside. Semiconductors, SPY, everything else will help get us there. So I'm not super concerned, especially when we are seeing the VVIX pulling downward. We're seeing our HIG buying upward. We're seeing liquid buying upward. So we are seeing the signals that we do want to see starting to occur. Bitcoin did sell downward a little bit. We do want to see this buying upward. Now again on SPY, if we can get this cup to close and not have a rejection here, because potentially this could still be that very dangerous head and shoulders. Um, if we can get the cup to close to the upside here, which is only about 60 cents away, then we will invalidate that head and shoulders, and that will be telling us that, you know, we will be heading to the upside. So that's what we're looking for currently. Now, everybody should be having quite a good day. Even with those early put entries, I was able to pull profit, so everybody else should have been able to, unless you were only able to enter that first put, which I think you would have probably came out neutral. So regardless, that kind of works out one way or another. Um, Everybody should now be in some form of call. Okay. Uh, we specifically targeted the dated calls for Success and TQQQ. That way we can really absorb the full upside premium move um, out of what we're expecting over the next few sessions with the upper Bollinger push, assuming we don't get this massive rejection here. VVIX did tick downward quite a bit. So it was at the 89.72. Now it's at the 80, or excuse me, not 89. It was at the 98.72. Now it's at the 98.52. So that was quite a bit of a leg downward, and that's something we're looking for. Um, we're looking for our dealers to not be hedging the downside. We're looking for our dealers to see that the upside orders are available and that they really do want to send us up to the upper Bollinger today and not screw us on that move for the fourth time. So we are looking for this cup to close here. It's looking super solid, but we just have to be very careful. Sorry if you can hear my daughter crying. She did not wake up on the right side of the bed, it sounds like. Poor girl. This is a great time if anybody has any questions or anything. Um, I know chat's kind of quiet right now, but if you do have any questions over any symbols or anything, now that we're kind of in our positions for the day, we're ready for this upside. We're really just watching signals at this point. Um, right now is a great time to answer questions about anything, so feel free to ask. Now, VVIX still pulling down, so this is good. This is definitely what I'm looking for us to continue pulling downward through this 20 mile here, and for us to see a lot of upside buying throughout the SPY and everything. So we are looking for this smaller cup to close to the upside so that it will invalidate that head and shoulders. And I'm going to take just a moment to take a sip of coffee and everything while we're watching this. And if anybody has any questions, RXT, yeah, absolutely. I think you asked me that yesterday and I didn't have a chance. I do apologize. Okay, so RXT, right? This is the daily time frame. I want to look at the weekly though. So this is perfect. Okay. Um, Weekly time frame. We have the week one securing the upper Bollinger. Week two, we did not get the higher high. That doesn't mean we don't get that at this point. But this is telling us that we are starting to get ready to have a downward consolidation. Out of the daily time frame, we had the upper Bollinger day one, secured the high. Day two, secured the higher high. Day three, starting to consolidate downward. Okay, so we're starting to see some of that downward consolidation on the daily time frame that we're looking for. Now, the first level you're looking for that downward consolidation would be the 5 mile. That's always our closest support. Currently, that's at 379. So you do have quite a bit of downside to really test. And with this, let's see the volume on this average volume. The average volume is only 3 mil. So this is actually quite a bit high today. Um, we really should be expecting that selling closer to that $4 range to retest that 5 mile. Whether that happens today or over the next two sessions, usually this is 2 to 3 days after hitting that day two upper Bollinger. So doesn't look good in terms of trying to buy it to the upside just yet. You do have some downward liquidity you need to really push through before you buy into it. Now I want to check SPY because I want this cup to close. I want this to secure our day already so that we can relax. Yes, it would be the 5 DMA. Yeah. That's always the first initial downside that you target. Okay, that cup closed. Do a little dance, everybody. We're getting ready to head to the upper Bollinger. Okay, so look, with this cup closing here, this does mean we're gonna see a little chop. Okay. But this is bullish chop, Again, with the top of the cup hitting, we expect a slight handle downward before the big send off. Okay. This cup is closed, the liquidity is set, so now we can have that downward chop. Okay. Um, that's probably what the rest of the session's really going to be looking like is just building that handle out, really farming people out of their calls, getting bears put in inputs that aren't going to print, and then heading to the upside. Um, Again, dealers are really trying to sell calls in here, which means that they do try to burn people, um, and they try to buy those calls back for cheap, which they usually do. Last week was a very good example on that Thursday when we specifically told everybody to buy the dip, because I thought it was pure liquidity and it ended up being exactly that, and we had a super, super large buying day afterward. Um, this price action is telling you almost to the T that we are going to the upper Bollinger. Okay, so there's not much to worry about for today. Unless we get some bad news, then today is pretty much set in stone. Um, at the top of this cup, this is an opportunity to take a hedge position. So for me, I'm just adding into these $10 success calls, um, because semiconductors have been pretty much the main runner. Um, if we're gonna have a major market crash or anything, then it will come from semiconductors. Excuse me. So that's what we're looking for. And again, everybody should be doing very, very well today. If you didn't, I'd really like you to kind of just talk about it in chat and we can go over it because while I am here as a trader, I am here also as a teacher. I would like to help everybody be able to, see quality profits and consistent profits each and every session. So if you had any issues today, feel free to talk about it and we will go over it in chat. Um, yeah. But anyway, I'm gonna take just a few minute break. I go ahead and write a little note. Time is it is 10:54. So let's come back at 11. AFK back at 11 a.m. And I will be streaming quite a bit today, so um don't worry about me just like coming back in at mid stream. uh yeah, I'll be right back, everybody. And drip is a buy opportunity today. Yeah, yeah, sorry, I'm zoning out. I did mention that earlier that buying drip, try to at least get the 100 shares, but I can't give you financial advice, but try to at least get 100 shares for the buy. That way, when the time comes, we can sell CCs. But I definitely like buying drip today. Um, always buy the dip when we're trying to. It's just a major opposite side. So, oh, I'm not a saint. I just, it's trading's hard. And the fact that I've had to spend, I mean, I've spent thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of hours, um, and I've had to lose literally thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to get to this point where I'm able to read this stuff and be consistent. Um, so that's why I like to help people. I think that trading's really the future. I worry about that with AI a lot, that AI is going to basically take the majority of jobs. Well, what's a job that AI really can't steal from us? It's trading. It's already AI driven. It's already driven by algorithms. All we're doing is learning how to follow what they do, um, and be able to profit off of their movements. So this is something that I think you know, eventually children are going to have to start learning to basically learn how to trade and once they become adults, that's going to be their job. Um, I know that sounds super dystopian, but I really think that this is going to be a future job switch for majority of people um, in first world countries. So drip $7 call for September. I don't dislike that. Um, I would really rather say try to get the $6 call or even the $7 call for December if you're going to try to go that far out of the money. Um, even though I fully feel like we'll be hitting that price well before that time. Um, It's just something to consider. Um, the June 18 calls. Now, which calls is that? That shouldn't be for drip. Are you talking for success? Because if you are talking about success, then I actually don't dislike that at all. I would try to get a little further out. Okay. I misread that. I apologize. Yes, I really like the $5 calls for June. I think those are going to pay out very, very well. I like those immensely. The $6 calls for June, not so much. I think those might run out of the money, but it's still not the worst option in the world either. Okay. Um, I really would try to target those $5 calls, so I think that's really where the big money is going to be. Okay, so I'm gonna be right back in just a few minutes because I do need to get my daughter in the car and everything. So, um, give me a few minutes, everybody. Uh, yeah, sorry, I misunderstood what you meant at first. Yeah, those $5 calls for drip, absolutely love them. But yeah, I'll be right back in just a few minutes, everybody, and we'll continue to navigate the rest of the day. So I will be right back. Alright, I'm back, everybody. Sorry for that. Okay, so let's see. I got burnt on my 737 there. So when did you sell, if you remember the exact time? That way I can look at it. Same with the entry too. Did you enter when we originally entered? Because I know I had seven or yeah, 736 puts, and while they weren't the most profitable, I still profited about 20 or $30 roughly each. Um, so there definitely should have been some very quality room within that 737 put. Um, Now we didn't get a very long downside here at all. So, um, if you were trying to limit order during that moment, that might have been when you basically got kicked out of your trade. Um, it's very difficult because today was a very bullish day. Okay. Um, we did have some, you know, bearish divergences with the VVIX, with the HIG, with liquid, but those ended up starting to go back in our favor. Now, this downside, we did see the downside within QQQ and SOX pretty aggressively. And let me just pull those up so that we can really see the difference between those downsides. I want to delete some of this so that we can go over it. But that downside candle was this one. Well, at this point in the day, we already had a full-on sell, pull back up, and sell back down. Um, so that was a little difficult, and it didn't last very long. I mean, it was only just for a few minutes. Um, and we saw it more so within, again, semiconductors and tech rather than the S&P. We had an original sell to the downside, and we had another major sell to the downside. Well, SPY didn't get that. SPY only just got that single tiny little tap. Um, so that's why when we do our trades, and I just want to kind of highlight this on both ends. But when we do our trades, when we take short positions from the top, we always exit at the 20 mall, okay? If you only have one position, then you exit 100%, okay? If you have runners, meaning, for example, usually I buy about 2 to 4 contracts at a time, and then I'll add on to those in, 2 to 4 increments. So for the 736 puts, while I did fully exit because I didn't really see the downside continuing too much further, um, usually I'd only exit about 80% of those puts and leave the other 20% to continue running, just in case it's going to run all the way to lower Bollinger and really make some quality profit. But second you hit that 20 mile, this trade's done. Whatever happened all the way up there is now out of the cycle. The algorithm is basically kicking that out of the system. Okay. Um, which means that you really don't have a whole lot of time to do your exits. You have to just be willing to exit at that 20 mile. I wouldn't even limit order sometimes. Like when I sold my puts here, I put a market order in. I wasn't gonna chase pennies at that point. I just wanted my positions in profit because they were $20, $30 profit a piece. So I just took the profit on them. Didn't worry about the limit order, didn't worry about the semantics of it at all. Um, and unfortunately, sometimes that's how these trades are gonna go. Um, there's trades where it will just barely touch the 20 mile and it might only be there for 10, 15 seconds. before it launches off. Um, but again, we always take puts from the upper Bollinger to the 20 mile, and we always take calls from the lower Bollinger to the 20 mile in the exact same fashion. Um, today would have been a little bit different if we did have a call opportunity, but we didn't. Our call opportunity was literally when we had that put exit, which that's not an ideal opportunity. Usually I do not like to enter on the 20 mile. I'll do so if necessary, but it's not something that I find a lot of value in. Um, because again, we've highlighted it this morning, but your movement really comes from buying these lower Bollinger moves. It doesn't really come from picking up those calls in the mid band. Today's a little different just because we have the upper Bollinger, um, literally right at the 740.66, meaning that if we're going to head up today, that means we're basically going to be closing above the 741. So our upside today is huge. Um, I have no problem entering at that 20 mile on a day like today when we're only $1 away from really closing that upside and securing it for the next day's higher high. So hopefully that makes sense. I use Webull as a broker. Um, I think they're a great broker, but I do have a issue with them right now. Um, which I actually need to I need to contact support again because they owe me a phone call. So I need to see when they're scheduling that. Anyway, I'm trying to schedule a phone call with some of their senior management right now. Um, because Webull's a really awesome broker. They have a chat system in it and everything, but it's gotten so bad with the censorship in their chat system that you can't even chat anymore. I can't even post even the most basic technical analysis without the post being blocked or heavily, quote unquote shadow banned. I have over 8,000 followers, and my posts used to get, 50 plus likes per post. I'd get tons and tons of comments. Now my post might only get one, two, three, maybe 10 likes on a good day. Um, which that's not reasonable when you have 8,000 something followers. That means that people just aren't seeing my posts. And I know that that's true because Silverliner on Webull, he's another big content, um, producer or trader, I should say. He's a trader who posts good information. Um, Even his posts, he won't even see my posts without physically going into my portfolio basically and looking me up. Which is really unfortunate. It really makes me dislike the brokerage a lot, but all these tools and everything is on Webull, and I absolutely love it. So they need to work with me and get that fixed. Yeah, I like the 10 calls on Success. The 10 calls on Success are a very good hedge because if we're gonna have some crazy downside, those are definitely going to hit. Also, give me just 1 second. I need to turn my heater off. Okay, so let me see. I want to read exactly how this trade went. So BDT, you're the same time frame as me. Okay. So I entered at 640. That's that would be right there. So I'm gonna mark this off right there as your entry. Okay. And then the exit you sold at, let's see, sold at 7:55 a.m. So that would be, so you missed that exit, it looks like. So you sold right in there. Does that look correct? If I got those times right? Um, and let me go to the 5 minute time frame because this kind of shows how tight of an entry and exit that is. So for the Sox calls, um, currently those are going to be a hedged position. Okay. Um, because they're a hedged position, don't be going out too far on them. I wouldn't go out for the May 22nd. I would literally just go for this week. Because the whole philosophy is that very likely a hedged position is going to burn. Okay. A hedge is really just insurance. Okay. Um, Now there will be an opportunity to short into later this next or later this week or a longer duration short, but we want the day two upper Bollinger and we want to see bearish structure at the top of that. And then that's when we could start tagging on some extremely dated shorts. Now, I do want to just go over the trade. Yeah, so I see what kind of happened is that it pulled back very quickly. And I guess this is what I really want you to start looking for on exits is that, and I want to make this an arrow. You see how you entered at the proper time, and regardless of what anybody says, this is a proper entry. Okay. Um, Within the 5 minute time frame, entering upon that upper Bollinger is literally when you do that. Okay. This was a great entry. Um, Was it the most opportune? No, but none of us really hit that. At least I didn't. Okay, I was having to buy multiple puts throughout this entire time. Okay. Now we started tapering off of the upper Bollinger, meaning we're starting to pull away from that upper Bollinger. Now, when we start pulling away from the upper Bollinger, what does that do? That tells our price action either one, we're going to head back up to that upper Bollinger, or two, we're getting ready for that 20 mile. I was seeing a lot of signals that was really telling us that, okay, I really think this 20 miles coming up. Um, that's why I made the joke. I had my hand on the trigger, like I was ready to go. Um, I did not think this was going to last very long at all. Um, Today just happened to be one of those moments where I was correct about that. Um, there's been times where I've been absolutely incorrect, where I've done a very quick sell on the 20 mile and then it's still dumped the rest of the day. Okay. Um, you have to use those 20 mile exits emphatically. I mean, you have to use it to a T. You have to make it law that once the price action starts pulling that 20 mile, you sell. If a limit order is going to take you too long, then you get that market order in. You get it sold, okay? Because once the trade's done, once you go from the upper Bollinger to the 20 mile, technically that trade is complete, okay? Anything beyond that is extra for us. Um, but this is how you get the almost 100% consistent trades is you trade from the Bollingers to the mid band. So don't hesitate to market sell next time. Um, if you're feeling uncomfortable with correctly adjusting the limit order, because that happens with a lot of people where that range hits, You're sitting there fiddling around trying to get this contract sold with the limit order, and then all of a sudden it starts running away from you, and then it's like, well, crap. Can I recover this position at this point? Nope. Okay. Now I sold, and I sold it for a loss rather than being able to potentially have this major win. Um, and we don't, I'm not trying to make you feel bad at all. Hopefully that's not what this is about, but the whole thing is that we want everybody getting their profits. Okay, we want everybody feeling comfortable with their trades. Um, we want everybody to, not miss those exits. So I'd rather you market sell or market order if you have um, to get the profit. If you end up missing, 15, 30, $40 of profit, is that the end of the world? No, because it's better than being 0, right? Than having a major loss. Um, so we'll focus on that as you continue to trade with me, but really use that 20 mile as the exit. Okay. Yes, I do take Soxal puts when I'm shorting semis. Um, we have massive room within Soxal to short, and the cool thing about shorting Soxal compared to shorting a lot of the different market is that we get a lot of global exposure within Sox and Soxal. We get AMAT, we get TSM, a couple other big, really large semiconductor companies that really aren't picked up by some of these other ETFs. Um, so you get that global exposure where you get to short everything. So I really like Soxal puts when the time comes. Soxas calls are really great. They're cheap. Um, and they can go pretty dang hard. I mean, I've had contracts that I've paid literally $10, $15 for, and they've ran to $300, $400. So, um, don't hesitate on the Soxas calls. Uh, but having a dated Soxal position is just perfect. It's just the icing on the cake. So we're getting our upper Bollinger here, everybody. I'm very, very excited because this is a move that we've gotten kicked out of multiple times. And what I mean is they rejected it 3 times last week. Um, if you've been watching my streams for a while, you know that last week I was very, very, very bullish. Even on that Thursday sell-off, um, I was incredibly bullish. I thought the entire sell-off was for liquidity. Now, the upper Bollinger is basically at that 741 range, which means that we have to close above it. We will be closing above this level. Okay. So when we're trying to target calls, knowing that we're going to be pushing absurd ranges like this, again, you can use your 20 mil because technically we have not had a single call entry on the day within what I would usually consider within my rule set, which is the lower Bollinger. Um, the only lower Bollinger they gave us was in the pre-market. That doesn't count. Okay. I mean, it counts, but it doesn't help us when we're trying to trade options, right? Um, they did not give us a call entry today. Technically, the only 2 call entries have been when we've gone to the mid band. Um, with this cup being formed here, what we can expect is another push to the mid band to head up. So if you haven't gotten calls, use that opportunity when we get to the mid band again. It will be pulling upward. And when I say mid band, that's the same as the 20 mile. Okay, so just so that we're very, very, very clear on that, the 20 mile and the mid band are literally the exact same thing. How we know this within our Bollinger settings, the length is literally the iterations of what we're tracking within the same for the 20 mile. They are the exact same levels. If you look on the moving averages and the Bollingers themselves, both of those levels are the exact same. So both at 739.23. So when I say mid-band, that is the exact same thing as the 20 mile. Yeah, don't worry about simulating it with Robinhood because the IV was basically in the dumps right here. When we were in this range, the IV even on my puts were pretty much trashed. Okay. Second we started pulling down, the IV absolutely rocketed. That's not something you're really going to be able to put into a calculator within any, reasonable time frame. Um, but understand the market is expecting upward today. So that downside is going to pay a lot when it comes in because a lot of people are suddenly saying, "Oh my God, I got to get into puts." Um, you know, um, so that's the whole reason why when you simulated it wasn't showing you the true profit. So be willing to definitely do those market orders. Because again, taking a less profit on a market order is better than having a burnt contract. So, um, so I don't know when you decided to change out a Weeble, but I've actually been having a lot of pretty much nothing but good to say about Weeble in terms of their orders and everything. Um, they've been adding a ton of new order types as well, and they've been really working on the speed of being able to buy and sell. Um, so just as a full-time trader, I've been heavily enjoying using Webull. So at this point, we're just kind of waiting for a move. Let's go ahead and take a look at the VVIX and everything. It is pulling downward. It's finally out of that red, very dangerous zone, back into the yellow cautionary zone. We do want to see this pulling down even further, but this is telling us that dealers are getting out of their insurance and really expecting that upside, which truly they should have been seeing the entire morning if they were any good, because they'd be seeing all the 740 orders coming in. So um, this should have been pulling down a lot faster. That's just my opinion, though. Um, with the HIG, I want to see the HIG and everything. I always watch the HIG super closely because the HIG is again the high yield corporate bond ETF. This is basically the top echelon of risk. So if risk is buying or selling, I want to know. Liquid's been buying upward too, and this is kind of the same thing as HIG, only except instead of it being the high yield corporate bond, it's the investment grade. So it's a very top echelon type ETF as well. So it's very good to track those. Semiconductors building a ton of bullish structure. We're going to go to this 532 any moment now. So that's looking super quality. So let's check. My daily upper Bollinger is at the 740.79. Okay, so let's go ahead and check your settings. This might be because of your width. Make sure you have that set to 2. Um, the width set to 2, I forgot the exact percentage of the volatility it tracks. I want to say it's around the 97 to 98% move. Um, this is going to get you very, very close to having, the most perfect Bollinger settings you can have. This is what I used to trade with, and it works extremely well. I know some brokerages set the length to 1, because it's or set the length to 3 because it's a lot less volatile. Setting it to 1 expands it more, so we wouldn't see as far of as many of these lower Bollinger moves coming in. If we change the width to either 1, that would expand it so we'd barely see any of those, or 3, we'd be seeing a lot more. Um, Not what we're wanting to track. We're wanting to track real movements because there is a real mechanic to these upper Bollinger moves where, again, the day 1 you secure the level, day 2 you secure the higher high, and then between day 2 to day 5 you start consolidating back to the 5 mile. Okay, so um definitely make sure the Bollingers are set to 20 and 2. Yeah, you're very welcome. You're very, very welcome. Again, I just enjoy teaching and showing what took me a lot of money and a lot of struggling and everything to learn. Um, I never thought I'd be a trader. I didn't go to school to trade. I didn't do anything. I had to learn all this on my own, and it's not easy. And honestly, the sources just don't exist. I've tried to look up quality sources, even for the moving averages, because right now I'm writing a book, and so I do need to basically be reading other people's books as well to see that I'm not just basically copying the same information that they're putting out. And nobody, nobody has written a quality book on moving averages that I've read. Um, None of it explains any of the mechanics that I go over, um, which is shocking to me. It's shocking to me as a retail trader that the year 2026 I'm able to sit here and find mechanics that I can't even Google. Okay. That we have now back tested and found insane um, consistency within. So becoming a teacher, becoming a trader and everything was not something I expected. Um, but I'm happy to do it because again, I think this is kind of the future for, the future generations. This is something I'm gonna have to teach my daughter eventually. Um, trading's very, very important. So I really put a lot of weight into it, and it's not so much about the money for me, um, but really about just getting the lesson and the knowledge out there. So if any big market makers are watching, please don't send a hitman at me. I'm just a little retail dude. Check the so I don't know if you're using Webull, but sometimes you could be scrolled in to a different time frame or looking at a different candle and it will show you a different value. It can be a little finicky, so just double check that, especially if you're on the phone. Um, I know on mobile sometimes my Bollingers will get kind of offset, so yeah, I could check NVIDIA. We have the length set to 2. Okay, length set to 2, and that's for tracking the exact mechanics we're looking for. Okay. All right, NVIDIA. So, sorry for all the drawings. Jeez. Okay, so this is how you can tell if someone actually trades or not, you know? I got drawings for months, okay? Anyway, with NVIDIA, what we were really looking for today is that we identified this cup very early on, and not only is that its own cup, but it's actually a much larger cup as well. So with that, we were expecting that cup top to hit. That cup top has hit. Now we're expecting somewhat of a pull down, okay? Forming some form of handle. Now, this handle could be really large or it could be very small. I'm seeing a very small handle right here that potentially could be breaking us out even further, which on the 30-minute time frame, that would not really invalidate anything, but usually we anticipate a fairly large handle on the cup. Um, so that's just something to look for. Now, with that said, with that cup being closed, we don't exactly need a handle here because we do have this very large cup. And I want to make sure. Yeah, so should have drawn it over here. It did close over here, which is also telling us that potentially we can have an even larger handle forming. So we will watch the video very closely. Um, but let me go over the daily time frame. So the daily time frame is looking great, okay? And what I really mean by this is that we are seeing the day one upper Bollinger move coming in here. So with the upper Bollinger being at that 219.78, that means that we just have to close above that level. We basically just have to close above the 220. Okay, so Nvidia can still sit here and grab some liquidity, but we've already secured the day one upper Bollinger very likely. From this day one upper Bollinger, we are expecting a higher high out of day two, and then perhaps that's when we get that very large handle to continue moving upward. So overall, Nvidia is looking really bullish. And on this daily time frame, we do have this cup formed here with a handle, okay, which is telling us that Nvidia really wants to break out. Okay, it really wants to break out, and we see the ADL even forming that cup right here as well. So there's a lot of money coming into this, and people are really expecting further upside. Now, I don't like taking any positions on this currently just because we are getting ready to enter into the upper Bollinger Day 2. Um, Usually upper Bollinger Day 2 is when you take a short position, so I'm kind of waiting for that before I engage anything on Nvidia. Oh, the weekly. That's why. I think I misread. Probably why we're having a misunderstanding. Hold on. Now, what the heck? Why is yours different than mine? Now, is yours set to the close? Make sure that the import or the input source is set to close, length set to 20, width set to 2. Um, I don't know why that would be different. My weekly's showing 742.20. The daily's showing 740.74. Yeah, I don't get that. Try to close your program and reopen it just to see if that fixes it or something because that's strange. Really strange. Um, and thank you, Drew. Yeah, it's gonna take me a while to write. Um, I've been working on it very, very, very hard. It's very hard to essentially write something when there's not a lot of information about it other than it's coming straight from me. So I've been reading a lot of the Mastering Chess Endgame books to kind of really grasp how to write this book. Um, and I really think I'm gonna follow that type of format because it really is good. Um, and I think it's something that hasn't really been done for the market. I've read all sorts of books about dealer positions and the Greeks and blah 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 blah. But it's just financial books. It doesn't really tell you how to trade it. It doesn't tell you, what happens when you get to the five ball. What is that really indicating? Um, you know, that information I can never find. It's something I had to entirely discover on my own, which it still blows my mind that I did. Um, but I'm happy to share it with you all, and thankfully I did. So, yeah, yep, that's how it works. Just either smack the top of the TV or unplug it and plug it back in. So I'm expecting a pretty rest of the day to be fairly boring. Um, EVIX did pull down all the way to the 97.56. It is up slightly at the 97.83. Again, I'm not super concerned about that. I'm just mainly looking at the VVIX as forming handles on these cups currently. So, for example, this handle right here, we do need to see some downside, very likely at that 20 mile range. So, again, if you haven't entered those calls, um, the TQQQ calls and the SOX S puts are still super ideal. Um, but even the 1 or 2 DTE spy calls at this point could be very, very, very nice. Okay. Um, if you're going to go one DTE, target the 742. Okay. Even if you do 2 DTE, then still target that 742. Okay, because that secures the higher high, and you'll still be building a very quality premium. So from that 20 mile, that should be another entry into the calls to the upside. But other than that, everything's looking very, very good. We're seeing buying in liquid still. We're seeing buying in HIG, even though it's slow. We are seeing, oh, excuse me, don't mean to yawn into the mic. We're seeing a cup and handle out of Bitcoin, which is, alluding to further upside. Um, we're seeing semiconductors getting ready to close this cup that we talked about. And that will bring us all the way to the 532. From that cup, we can expect slightly bearish structure at the top. Um, and from that bearish structure at the top, forming a handle to the downside. But hopefully everybody's having a great day. I know, there was that missell on that part, but hopefully you understand now, um, kind of how to target this level a little better. And you know, over the next few days, I'll try to keep people in to really exiting upon that 20 mile a lot easier. That way you won't have to fiddle around too much, but we'll always just continue to target that. Yeah, I've been writing everything on. So I feel like it's kind of redundant at times, and it's kind of annoying. But I firstly write everything in notebooks. So currently I have 4 different notebooks filled out on my desk. Um, all with information on the books. But these notebooks are in order. They are um all sectioned up. So one section might be moving averages, the next section might be talking about um selling CCs. It's not organized one bit, but it does help because everything I've been writing in my notebook, I've been slowly importing over to the computer. And from that, that's when I can kind of chop it up and piece it together in a more manageable way. But thank you for that. It does help an immense amount being able to write it down first. So they tend to carry very close the SPY and SPACs. Um, for example, right now the SPACs is at 7,423, which is basically telling you 742. Okay. Um, well, no. I always misread this. So usually it's the first two that really matter. So the 7,400 is going to mark that 740. Now, with the cents in here, that's kind of when you have to calculate that up a little bit, because that's where you get the additional dollar upside and everything. Um, I don't know the exact math on it right now. I'm sorry, I'm falling asleep, but I'll work on getting you an exact answer to that over the next few days. So, let me write that down in tomorrow's stream. Are you gonna be in tomorrow's stream? Starting same time? So I'll get that. I'll have an answer for you in tomorrow's stream. Okay. I wrote that down, so I will look into that and go over that. And then we can discuss that tomorrow, and I can give you kind of the exact calculation on how you get between the SPACs and the SPY. So, um, yeah, yeah. Now, is there any other final questions for the day? Um, I still have a little bit of time left, but I did not sleep very well last night, so I am starting to get kind of really tired, and then I'm noticing I'm starting to blink a lot more. So I'm trying not to catch myself falling asleep here. But if there's any final questions or anything, right now is a great time. We can go over it. But I am gonna take like 3 minutes just to drink some coffee so I don't fall asleep. So I will be right back, everybody. All right, I'm back, everybody. Got some coffee in me, so I will survive another few minutes. Okay, let's see what we got. By Julian, let's see. How do you determine what a contract will be worth? Do you already have a training video you've recorded? Um, I actually think I have, but it's been a long time, so I need to go track it down. I do know I've written on this before, but how do we know what a contract's going to be worth? Okay. Um, Outside of using calculations or a calculator or anything, we have to understand that there's multiple different Greeks inside of an option, and each one of those are essentially a weight, okay? And each of those weights are going to affect the overall value. And I know this sounds very, very basic, but each one of those weights are determining something different. Now, most of us know what theta is because it likes to wreck our positions. That's time. There's Vega, which is volatility. Most people won't ever track that or even know what it stands for, but we track that because we have that in our Gex and Dex system. We track the gamma, which the gamma is basically, think about it like this. And I don't know what year you were born in, but I was born in the 90s. I was a teenager when Halo came out, and I remember everybody waiting in line, uh, literally at midnight to go get Halo. Um, that's what Gamma is, okay? It's everybody waiting in line for a specific level. Um, so Gamma's very important. It tells a lot about where the actual price is going. Um, Now we track those gamma levels using our Gex system, okay? And what that does is it maps out all the gamma levels. It shows where the specific weights of the day are. That tool is in the Discord, it's free. Just check the gamma or the Gex area or ask in the trading chat. Somebody will get you a link to that. But it is free and you know, well, it might be the $1 subscription currently right now, but eventually that will be going free. Um, So that's one way. Okay, so you can tell where the interest is going. Now, I did not check that today. That's usually something I don't check very often. Um, it was something I used to check a lot in the past when I didn't know how to read market structure as well as I do. But checking the GEX is super important because it tells you basically if there's a ton of orders at the 740 strike calls or if there's a massive wall of, say, 742 puts building. It tells you exactly what's going on with that, and it's really useful information. Now, the primary Greek that I think everybody should understand is the delta. Okay. And let's go ahead and look at the options here. Let's see, how do I pull this over on the computer? I don't know how to do this on the computer. Hold on. It's the delta you want to see. Anyway, we're gonna pretend, I don't like any of these. This is hard on the computer. How do I drag this over? Hold on, I feel like I'm being stupid here. I like, okay, Greek focus, there we go. Okay, the delta. So look at this 740 call, okay? It has a delta of 0.53, okay? What that's telling you is that for every dollar of upside, you're going to gain $53 from that contract, okay? Same with the 379 call. Every dollar of upside within the SPY, you're going to be gaining $70 of weight within that contract. Okay, so the delta is really nice to kind of see how much value you're going to be gaining. Now, deltas are never a constant. They are always shifting, and the closer to your strike you get, the higher your delta is going to get. Now, deltas cap out at 99, okay? Meaning $99.99 per dollar upside. Um, but that depends on the fund too. So for example, if it's like SPACs, you're going to be having, 20, $30 moves to the upside for every $1, $2 move SPY does. So the delta will be, very large still, but it's still going to be moving the exact same. It's just you'll notice a lot more out of that delta because you're getting more dollar movement. Um, but to truly answer your question, how do I know what a contract's going to be worth? We use our levels. Okay. So for when we were in the upper Bollinger here, let me go ahead and draw them. When we were targeting this range, what is the exit that we're trying to target here? It's that 20 mo. Okay. Well, where was the 20 mo at the time? It was at the 737. Okay, so that meant that truthfully, we should have had puts between the 738 to the 737. Now, I entered some of these puts a little earlier in the day, back when the 20 mile was essentially at the uh higher 736. Okay, which is why I was tagging on those 736 puts because if we're going to go from the upper Bollinger to the 20 mile, then that range is going to hit, and that contract is basically going to hit in the money. And that's what I really try to attempt to do. So we push to the upper Bollinger here. We hit that 738, 739. Ideally, we would have really wanted to have those 737 puts because we want those to hit either at the money or in the money. That's the entire goal of options trading is that you want an out of money strike running into the profit. Okay. Um, and that's pretty much all we do here is focus on well, I shouldn't say all, but that is a large portion of how you make very good profits on the day with your 0 DTEs. Now, you can play 0 DTEs where you just play purely in the money, where you're expecting that downside to pay you the full, $99 per dollar up or down within that delta. You just have to be careful because if that option goes out of the money, then you're losing a ton. And theta is also going to be burning against that contract a lot more. Um, so just something to think about. Yes, there's still room. There's still room on the Success put. So let's talk about that. Today we're expecting the upper Bollinger. Okay, which means that we will be closing above this basically 741 range. From the upper Bollinger day one, day two, we expect a higher high. Okay, and this goes through semiconductors, QQQ, everything. Okay, so with that higher high, that's when we start exiting a lot of those calls for this week. Okay, because this was the move we've been looking for out of the last you know, 5 or 6 trading sessions now. They've just kind of bumped us out of the move each and every time. But today we should almost certainly see above the upper Bollinger, secure the level, day two, reach that higher high, find the bear structure, and from that bear structure, downward consolidate. Okay, so that's kind of how that works. And again, this is fully back tested, so it is an extremely, extremely accurate mechanic. It's something that you cannot find on Google unless it somehow Googles me. Um, it's not gonna find it. So, um, that's how I kind of try to plan my strikes. Okay. So it's like we've been discussing the 742 for SPY for the calls. Well, why am I targeting that? Well, because we have to close above that 741 today. And with the upper Bollinger mechanics, we are going to be seeing a higher high. Um, that puts our 742 call very well in the money. That could be in the money by a whole $2, potentially even $3. Um, That's super awesome. Um, especially when if you were to buy it in the current day, you'd be buying it basically out of the money right now. Um, since we're still at the 740. So, okay, everybody. Is there any final questions? If not, then thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for supporting my work, and hopefully, what I have been teaching is bringing you some fulfillment within your trading, and hopefully, providing some new skills that it's really hard to find. um, but we're gonna keep doing this each and every day. Again, I stream Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. I won't be streaming Wednesday mornings just because that's time when I go spend time with my wife. Um, but other than that, uh, yeah, thank you all so much, and I hope to see you all tomorrow morning. And we'll do it again. We'll each and every day just continue doing the same mechanics, continue learning the exact same stuff, and we'll just keep at it, everybody. So look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Thank you for supporting what I do.